All right, so today we're diving deep into control and illusion.
Ooh, that sounds fun.
And we've got these two sources that tackle it through some pretty classic stories.
Okay.
1984 and The Truman Show.
Wow. Using fiction to understand reality.
Right. It makes you wonder, how much control do we actually have over our lives?
Yeah.
So let's start with 1984.
Okay.
Oceania, the party Big Brother.
Oh,
It's like the textbook example of totalitarian control.
absolutely. What's so chilling about 1984 is how the party uses ideology, ingsoc, to control every single aspect of life.
Like what people think, believe, even what they remember.
Exactly.
It's not just about physical force then.
No
It's
kidding.
about controlling minds, too. This whole newspeak thing is wild.
Yeah.
They're literally changing language to make rebellion unthinkable.
Right.
Isn't that a bit extreme?
Well, not if you want absolute power.
Okay.
Think about it. By getting rid of words like freedom,
Okay.
you
Yeah.
limit people's ability to even conceive of those ideas.
Well-
That's control at its deepest level.
Wow. And then there's doublethink.
Oh.
This idea that you can believe two contradictory things at once.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's like mental gymnastics.
It is.
How does that even work?
Well, it's about breaking down a person's ability to reason independently.
Okay.
If you convince them that black is white and white is black, depending on what the party says,
Yeah.
you've basically created a walking contradiction.
Oh, wow.
Someone completely susceptible to manipulation.
And don't forget the thought police.
Oh, yeah,
Constant state of paranoia.
totally.
It feels a bit far-fetched, though, doesn't it? I mean, sure, we have cameras everywhere,
Yeah.
but it's not like they're reading our minds.
Not yet, at least.
Yet.
But information control and surveillance,
Right.
those are real concerns today.
Right.
Think about how algorithms curate what we see online, shaping our perceptions without us even realizing it.
That's creepy.
It's subtle, but it's a form of influence.
Okay, so it's not just about dictators and secret police then.
Nope.
It's about these unseen forces that shape our reality in less obvious ways.
Exactly.
Which brings us to this concept of the habitus.
Yes.
Both sources talk about it.
They do.
What exactly is it?
Okay, so think of the habitus as like the unwritten rules of the game of life.
Okay.
It's the set of beliefs, values, and behaviors that we pick up from our culture that shape how we see the world and how we act within it.
We just absorb it.
Yeah, we often don't even realize they're there.
So basically, we're all just playing our roles in this giant societal play,
Kind of.
following a script you didn't write.
Right.
But where does control come in?
Okay, well,
Isn't the habitus just normal?
it is normal. But that doesn't mean it can't be manipulated.
Oh.
In 1984, the party designs a habitus built on fear and obedience.
Okay.
It's all about crushing individuality,
Wow.
making people act in predictable, controllable ways.
And what about in The Truman Show?
Yeah.
It's not as dark as 1984.
Yeah.
But it's still about a controlled environment.
Oh, absolutely. Truman's entire world, Sea Haven,
Yeah.
is a fabricated habitus
Okay.
designed to keep him content and unaware of the truth.
That's kind of terrifying.
It is.
Like they're puppeteering his whole existence.
Yeah.
So if this habitus can be so easily manipulated,
Right.
how do we know we're not being controlled right now?
Ooh, that's the question, isn't it?
How do we even begin to question something
Yeah.
that we don't even realize is influencing us?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Both Winston Smith in 1984 and Truman Burbank in The Truman Show,
Yeah.
they start to see cracks in the facade.
Okay.
And their journeys offer some valuable insights.
So we're starting to see how these fictional characters can help us understand real-world issues.
Exactly.
But Winston and Truman had some pretty dramatic wake-up calls.
They did.
A forbidden love affair and a literal spotlight falling from the sky.
That'll do it.
What about the rest of us? How do we know when something's off?
Well, it starts with paying attention to those nagging doubts.
Okay.
Those moments when something just doesn't feel quite right.
Ah.
It's about being willing to question the assumptions we've always taken for granted.
So basically becoming more aware of our own internal compass.
Yeah.
And whether it's pointing us in the right direction,
Exactly.
trusting our gut instincts even when they seem crazy
Yeah.
or go against the grain. It's about being willing to look for evidence
Okay.
that might contradict what we've always believed.
I like that.
Sometimes the truth is staring us right in the face.
Yeah.
But we're so conditioned to see things a certain way that we just don't recognize it.
That's true.
It's like those optical illusion pictures
Oh, yeah.
where you see one thing at first, but then you realize there's a whole other image hidden in plain sight.
That's a great analogy.
It's...
It highlights the importance of perspective.
Oh, okay.
The way we see the world is always shaped by our own unique set of experiences and beliefs.
That makes sense.
So the more we can broaden our perspectives,
Yeah.
the more likely we are to see things clearly.
So if we want to break free from the influence of a controlled habitus,
Right.
we need to start questioning everything we think we know.
I like it.
But what happens then?
Well,
I mean, both Winston and Truman face some pretty serious consequences
they do.
when they try to rebel.
That's the thing about challenging the status quo.
Yeah.
It rarely comes without a cost.
Right.
But it's important to remember that the cost of conformity can be even greater.
So it's a choice then, living a lie and facing the consequences of seeking the truth.
You got it.
That's a tough call.
It is.
But what are some of the specific consequences of living under a controlled habitus?
Well, one of the biggest is the loss of individuality.
Oh.
When we're constantly pressured to conform, to think and act in prescribed ways, we lose touch with our own unique identities.
So we become more like cogs in a machine than free-thinking individuals.
Yeah.
That sounds incredibly depressing.
It can be.
It's like losing your soul, becoming a robot programmed to follow orders.
Right.
And it's not just about losing our individuality either.
No.
It's also about losing our capacity for authentic emotional expression.
That's right.
In controlled environments, genuine emotions are often seen as a threat.
A threat to the established order.
It's like everyone's wearing a mask, afraid to show their true selves.
Yeah, and I can see how that would lead to feelings of isolation and disconnection.
Exactly, and this lack of genuine connection makes us even more dependent on the system.
For validation and belonging.
That's like a vicious cycle.
It is.
It's hard to break free from.
It can be.
So we're not just talking about abstract philosophical concepts here.
We're not.
We're talking about real-world psychological and social consequences that impact our lives on a daily basis.
Every day.
And one of the most insidious consequences is the cultivation of fear and distrust.
Right.
When we're constantly being watched, monitored, evaluated, it creates a climate of paranoia and suspicion.
It does.
It's like everyone's walking on eggshells, afraid to say or do anything that might be perceived as out of line.
Which leads to self-censorship.
Oh, wow.
And a chilling effect on free speech.
Okay.
People become afraid to express their true thoughts and feelings.
Oh, yeah.
Which further stifles creativity, innovation, and social progress.
So we end up trapped
in this cycle of fear, conformity, and silence.
All the while believing it's normal.
That's just the way things are.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why it's so crucial to be aware of these dynamics.
Okay.
To question the assumptions that shape our reality. And to cultivate the courage to break free from the constraints that hold us back.
That's a daunting task.
It is.
But it sounds like it's essential for our individual well-being.
For sure.
And for the health of society as a whole.
Absolutely.
This is heavy stuff.
It.
We've gone from Big Brother to Truman to, well, I guess like you said, unseen forces.
Yeah.
And now we're talking about, well, the consequences of all this.
Right.
Maybe we should take a break.
Okay.
And come back to this in the next part.
Sounds good.
What do you think?
I agree. Let's take a moment to reflect.
Okay.
And we'll pick up this thread when we return. Welcome back. So we've been unpacking this idea of a controlled habitus.
Yeah.
How it shapes our reality without us even realizing it.
It's like we're all living on a movie set.
Kind of.
But we're the only ones who don't know it's fake.
Yeah. And that can be pretty unsettling.
It is, but you said before that the habitus isn't inherently a bad thing, right?
Right. It's more like a tool.
Okay.
It can be used for good or for bad.
How so?
Well, think about language.
Okay.
It can be used to express love.
Yeah.
Create beauty.
Right.
But it can also be used to spread hate and incite violence.
Right.
The habitus is similar.
Okay.
It can help societies function.
Yeah.
Create a sense of belonging, but it can also be used to manipulate and control.
So how do we know when the habitus has gone rogue? Like when it's crossed the line from being a helpful framework to a tool for oppression?
That's where critical thinking comes in.
Okay.
We need to be able to step back, analyze the messages we're receiving, the beliefs we're holding, the behaviors we're engaging in, and then ask ourselves, are these beliefs and behaviors truly serving me and my community, or are they serving someone else's agenda?
So it's about becoming aware of the underlying power dynamics at play.
Yes.
who benefits from the way things are.
Right.
And who might be disadvantaged.
Exactly. It's about challenging the status quo.
Yeah.
And asking if it's truly just and equitable.
You're getting it.
It's about recognizing that the habitus isn't neutral.
Okay.
It reflects the values and interests of those in power.
Right.
And those values and interests don't always align with the needs of everyone in society.
That makes me think about how certain groups, like women or minorities, have historically been marginalized and oppressed by the dominant habitus.
Right. Their voices and perspectives have been silenced or ignored.
Because they don't fit the pre-programmed script.
Exactly. That's a great example of how the habitus can be used to maintain power structures and perpetuate inequalities.
It's why it's so crucial to challenge those dominant narratives and to create space for diverse voices and perspectives.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we need to be critical thinkers, question the status quo, advocate for inclusivity and diversity.
Yes.
But what about those of us who are already trapped in a controlled habitus? Those who are struggling to break free from manipulation and the conditioning.
Right.
What hope do they have?
Well, that's where things get tricky. As we saw in 1984, breaking free from a deeply ingrained totalitarian habitus can be incredibly difficult, even dangerous. The party had a whole system in place to crush dissent and reintegrate those who strayed from the path.
Right. Winston's attempt at rebellion ultimately ends in tragedy.
It does.
He's broken, brainwashed.
Yeah.
Forced to betray his own values.
It's heartbreaking.
It's a cautionary tale about the power of propaganda and psychological manipulation.
For sure. But it's also a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming oppression, the human spirit can still resist. Winston may have been broken physically and mentally, but his initial act of rebellion, his love for Julia, his desire for freedom, those things represented a flicker of hope.
A tiny little glimmer.
In a very dark place.
So even though he ultimately failed, his struggle wasn't entirely in vain.
Exactly. It reminds us that resistance is always possible.
Even when the odds are stacked against us.
Always. And then we have Crewman's story.
Oh, yeah.
Which offers a slightly more optimistic perspective. While he also faces challenges and risks in escaping his manufactured reality, he ultimately succeeds in breaking free.
He does.
And stepping into the unknown.
It's a much happier ending.
It is. His story is a testament to the power of self-discovery. Of questioning the narratives we've been given. And of choosing our own path.
Even when it's uncertain and scary.
Exactly. And what's interesting about Truman's escape is that it's triggered by a series of seemingly small, insignificant events.
Oh, like what?
Well, a spotlight falls from the sky. A radio station starts broadcasting his movements. He sees his dead father on the street. These seemingly random occurrences awaken a sense of doubt and curiosity in him, leading him to question the reality he's always taken for granted.
So it's not always about these grand dramatic gestures of rebellion, then?
Not always.
Sometimes it's about paying attention to the little things.
Yes.
The inconsistencies, the things that don't quite add up.
Exactly. It's about trusting that inner voice. That tells us something isn't right. Even when everyone around us is telling us otherwise.
That's a really good point.
We often dismiss our intuition or doubt our own perceptions. Especially when they conflict with the dominant narratives of our culture or social group.
Makes sense.
But learning to trust our gut instincts is essential for breaking free from a controlled habitus.
Well, it's like we need to develop our own internal BS detector.
I like that.
A sense of discernment. That allows us to sift through the noise. And identify what's true and authentic for ourselves.
And that's a skill that takes practice. It's not something we're born with. It's something we have to cultivate through conscious effort and self-reflection.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Well, we need to expose ourselves to diverse perspectives. Challenge our own biases and be willing to change our minds when presented with new evidence.
That sounds like a lifelong journey.
It is.
Not a one-time fix?
Nope. But it's a journey that's ultimately worth taking.
I can see that.
Because the more we can free ourselves from the constraints of a controlled habitus, the more we can step into our authentic selves and create a world that reflects our own values and aspirations.
And that brings us back to this idea of responsibility. If we want to create a better world, a world where the habitus is a force for good rather than a tool for control, We need to start with ourselves.
We do. We can't just sit around waiting for someone else to fix things.
Right.
We need to take ownership of our own beliefs and behaviors. And we need to use our voices and actions to challenge injustice and create a more just and equitable world.
This is heavy stuff.
It is.
We've gone from Big Brother to Truman to BS detectors. And now we're talking about creating a better world.
I know, right?
Maybe we should take a break.
Okay.
And come back to this idea of personal responsibility in the next segment.
Sounds good.
What do you think?
I agree. Let's take a moment to reflect.
Okay.
And we'll pick up this thread when we return.
Okay. So we're back, and we've been talking about this concept of the habitus.
Right, this invisible force that can sometimes be used to control us.
Yeah, without us even knowing it.
Exactly.
And we were just getting into this idea of personal responsibility.
Yeah, what can we actually do about it?
It's easy to feel powerless when you think about these big systems of control.
It is.
It's like, okay, I get it, the habitus is powerful and it shapes our reality.
Right.
But what can one little person, actually do to change it?
That's where things get both challenging and exciting.
Okay, how so?
Because the truth is, change starts with each of us. We can't just wait for someone else to fix things or for the system to magically transform itself.
So you're saying we each have a responsibility to dismantle these systems of control?
I wouldn't say dismantle necessarily.
No.
It's more about becoming conscious participants in the ongoing evolution of the habitus. We can start by examining our own beliefs and behaviors and asking ourselves, are these things truly serving me, my community, and the greater good?
Okay.
Or are they perpetuating harmful patterns and inequalities?
So self-reflection is key.
It is.
But how do we even know which beliefs and behaviors are harmful?
That's a good question.
I mean, everyone thinks they're the good guy.
That's where critical thinking and open-mindedness come in.
Okay.
We need to be willing to challenge our own assumptions, to step outside our comfort zones, and to listen to perspectives that differ from our own.
So it's not just about introspection then?
Right.
It's about engaging with the world around us in a more conscious and critical way.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're all interconnected, and that our individual choices and actions have ripple effects.
Ripple effects.
That extend far beyond ourselves.
That makes me think of the butterfly effect.
Oh, yeah.
The idea that a butterfly flapping its wings in Brazil can eventually cause a hurricane in Texas.
Right. Our actions, however small, can contribute to larger shifts in the habitus.
Wow.
For better or for worse.
That's a powerful image.
It is, and it highlights the importance of intentionality.
Okay.
We need to be mindful of the impact our choices are having.
Right.
Not just on ourselves, but on the people around us.
Yeah.
And on the world at large.
So we need to be self-reflective, critical thinkers, and intentional in our actions.
Exactly.
But let's be real, changing deeply ingrained cultural norms and power structures.
Yeah.
That's a tall order.
It is.
Where do we even begin?
It might sound daunting.
It does.
But remember, the habitus is constantly evolving. It's not a static, monolithic entity.
So it can change.
It's shaped by the dynamic interplay of individual and collective choices.
So even small acts of resistance or change can make a difference.
Absolutely. Think about the civil rights movement.
Oh, wow.
The women's suffrage movement, the LGBTQ plus rights movement.
Okay.
These massive social transformations didn't happen overnight. Right. They started with individuals who were willing to challenge the status quo.
To speak truth to power.
To demand a better world.
So it's not about single-handedly dismantling the entire system then.
Yep.
It's about contributing to a larger wave of change.
Yes, one ripple at a time.
And change doesn't always have to be loud or dramatic either.
Yeah.
Right?
It does.
It can be quiet and subtle.
For sure.
Like choosing to have a difficult conversation with a family member who holds prejudiced beliefs.
Right.
Or making a conscious effort to support businesses that align with your values.
Exactly. So it's about being the change we want to see in the world, both in our personal lives and in our interactions with the larger systems that shape our reality.
Okay, that's a lot to take in.
It is.
We've talked about the habitus, control illusion, personal responsibility, the power of small actions.
Right.
I'm starting to see how these seemingly abstract concepts actually have very real and tangible implications.
They do, and I think that's one of the key takeaways from this deep dive.
Yeah.
The stories of 1984 and The Truman Show might seem like fictional narratives,
Right.
but they offer profound insights into the very real challenges we face.
Absolutely.
In navigating a world where control and illusion are often intertwined,
Yeah, they serve as reminders that we always have a choice.
Yes.
That we're not simply pawns in someone else's game.
We're not.
And that we have the power to shape our own realities.
Right.
And to contribute to a better world.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive,
right.
I want to leave you with a final thought.
Okay, I'm listening.
Remember the lessons of 1984 and The Truman Show.
Yeah.
Cultivate awareness, embrace critical thinking, question everything, and never underestimate the power of your own choices and actions.
Wow, what a journey.
It was.
I feel like I've been given a whole new set of tools.
I hope so.
For understanding the world and my place in it.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking us on this deep dive.
It's been my pleasure, and remember, the search for truth and the pursuit of a more just and equitable world is an ongoing process.
Right.
Keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.